videos are admittedly not perfect. The reason for the videos is to represent the candidates who aren't present, represent their views as closely as we could. So sometimes those videos are not available. Sometimes the quality is not as good as we'd like, but it's the best that we can do for the agenda that we have. Item number 6. This is a question that will be directed to all our candidates here. Can you name one part of a regular person's life that ought to be completely free of all government control, intervention, or influence? Mr. Riggs, you'll be first. 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and then Mr. Sneaker, if you would please take the podium when Mr. Riggs finishes.
One area that I feel the government shouldn't interfere with is your standing in law. I don't feel they had any right to turn the American people. I don't feel they had any right to turn the American people's standing in law from Constitution or corporate, which is a form of voluntary servitude and slavery, without their permission. It's not through a contract of adhesion without your written consent or anything. It's a contract that you can enter into by your participation, such as getting a birth certificate, which is different than a certificate of live birth, or accepting any benefit from the trust, then a corporate trust law applies to you. Basically, all these laws that we think the 10th Amendment shouldn't allow to come at us is all coming from corporate trust law. By changing your standing in law to a corporation, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, can a larger corporation that owns a smaller corporation command it what to do? Borrow money on its assets? Each one of you corporations, citizens of the United States, as a corporation, owes what, $300,000 independently to the national debt? Did you know your birth certificate is bought for $650,000 on the New York Stock Exchange by the IMF or the Federal Reserve? It's called voluntary slavery. Every one of us. That's how they attach jurisdiction. That's why when each of us owes $650,000 on the national debt, then the UN Small Arms Treaty, as they want to call it, I imagine they would be coming to take our guns away. On my website, Mark the Michigan video shows this was the UN's plan 15 years ago. It's a 15-year-old video that even talks about the Small Arms Treaty they're just now proposing today, as well as the age of the child, as well as the carbon tax. It's all on there. There's only a couple of things left on this blueprint that they haven't done. This is an early 90s video. I put it up there for laughs and giggles because I was on my soapbox back then, and now I'm proving myself right every day. Thank you.
The question itself was, can you name one part of a regular person's life that ought to be completely free from government control, intervention, and influence? And I believe that is what you consume. Whether it be products, services, what you ingest into your body should be free from that. I think the free market will dictate, or will allow that you will have being informed public as to what those products and services are. But currently the influence that the federal government has on this has proven to be a deterrent. You could make an argument that the drug administration in this country has actually killed more people than has actually saved. And, well, thank you. I know that sounds like a very, I know that probably sounds like a statement like, well, why would you say this? However, it's through corporate influence of these regulatory bodies that stops drugs that would normally help you from being introduced into society until they meet the proper regulations for this. However, if as an informed consumer you knew the risks of those items and were willing to take that risk willingly, then there should be no problem if you find a drug that may be able to save your life. So I think that is one area that should be free from any federal intervention whatsoever. Thank you.
The second topic is about the Federal Reserve. What's the actual purpose of the Federal Reserve and whose interest does the Fed serve? Mr. Sneaker, you will answer first after some videos. We'll have 3 minutes of
You brought up quite a handful of issues there. The 16th Amendment being the income tax issue, the Federal Reserve. I mean, that's really big right now because obviously, we're talking about bailing out countries in Greece now, not just, or countries in Europe, I should say, not just Wall Street anymore. Now, where do you stand on the Federal Reserve? I mean, you know, there's a lot of talk about auditing, ending. What are some of the steps that you would implement once you became a senator to dealing with the Federal Reserve problem?
Well, I would make no bones about it, Gary, that I believe that, I mean, I like what Ron Paul is doing, trying to audit the Fed, and maybe that's a good first step to show the American people that not only is it not a federal agency, it's just a cartel of bankers, of crooked elite bankers, but that my opinion is it just needs to be done away with. The Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution delegated that authority to the Congress. It's not to be outsourced. That's one of their functions, is to coin or print money and assign the value thereof. And they've gone and given that away. It's been, historical problem through several different administrations. I mean, the history says that presidents have been killed over it, and so it's just to me it's diabolical. The Federal Reserve is diabolical.
Now let's talk about a solution to the Federal Reserve. There's a lot of people that are sound monetary advocates, returning to a commodity-based currency. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, from what I've seen and what I've been able to study up on, I believe that a return to the gold and silver standard would work.
Another subject that thankfully people are becoming more informed about. The Federal Reserve was established in 1913 via a very secretive and clandestine criminal conspiracy that was hatched at Jekyll Island, Georgia. The Federal Reserve exists and operates in express violation of our Constitution. It has never been audited. And conservative estimates are that the Federal Reserve has amassed in excess of $50 trillion in untaxed profits since its inception. To the owners and to the operatives of this criminal syndicate that masquerades as a legitimate steward of the public trust, I would borrow
Mr. Sneaker, if you would, please. 2 minutes.
All right. Glad you guys put the question up. Nice. All right. What is the actual purpose of the Federal Reserve and whose interest does it serve? Does the Fed serve? When it was sold to the American public, the Federal Reserve was made because they wanted to provide stability within the financial marketplace. They also did not want to have one centralized place in power, which is why they called it a system of banks all around the country. The actual goal of the Federal Reserve, in my opinion, though, was the opposite of those two things, was to be able to control the monetary policy. And by being able to control that monetary policy, we've seen what happened in the 20s, in the 30s. We've seen what happened over various courses of the history since the Fed was started. So if the goal was to stabilize the system, it's provided the opposite effect. When it came to decentralized power, years coming up to the Fed being instituted, you did see that decentralization of power from Washington, D.C., using private capital formation, which is what other people were doing. They saw that, they saw the power they were about to lose, and that's another reason why they instituted the Fed, to further centralize the power. The ramifications of that have been a continual debasing of the currency to where it's worth approximately 4 cents of what it was worth in 1913 when it started. Now, why is that important? Because inflation is nothing more than a tax. And that tax affects the lower and the middle income people much more than it affects people that are of the higher pay scale. And that also encroaches on why more people in this country are dependent on the federal government. You've seen this you go through the history of since the Fed was created. We used to have one person go out and work and the other person take care of the wife or take care of the kids. Then 2 people had to work, which further eroded the family structure that we have in this country. Now people can barely make it at all, which is why we have 60% of the people dependent on the federal government, which is another reason why we have to completely audit the Federal Reserve, institute the Competing Currencies Act. Once we're able to do those 2 things, ending it should be no problem whatsoever.
was given to the American people in 1913 as a solution to the problem that the government caused. Retracting the currency down to less than $10 per populace put us into a great economic recession. People were begging for a reissue of greenback dollar currency so we can go back to having an economy the way it was when the greenbacks were in. They sold us the Federal Reserve as a way to fix the lack of money per populace. The Federal Reserve profits the Council of Foreign Relations who basically control it. Their purpose, I believe, is to rob us. They print money out of the air they pay no money for. They charge us, they pay 3 cents each for every bill they put in circulation, which the taxpayer also pays. As the gentleman said, they made $50 trillion in profit since then, off charging us interest off the money that they print out of the air. When our government should be doing that, and when the government charges banks interest to loan that money out for cars or automobiles, and they can take that money and put people back to work, restructure our middle class, help out healthcare. I mean, not healthcare, the Social Security folks and everything else. I mean, what, almost $1 trillion a year those folks make off us by doing what our government should be doing. Remember Benjamin Franklin said they didn't mind paying a little bit of tax on the tea, and very little tax on the tea back then, but they took away the colonies' right to write their own colonial script, which caused unemployment and everything. Well, that's what you got today. I mean, when we pay a tax, when they buy bonds out of currency that print out of the air, $11 trillion worth so far. We have to pay interest from here on out. I mean, why do you think it didn't have to get to double the trade deficit from $30 billion a month to $60 billion a month? You pay interest on that from here on out, because $60 billion a month more, they get to put back in circulation that you pay interest on, which is called interest on the national debt. The national debt is currency in circulation. It's all bogus. And the debt's based on 14th Amendment Section 4, which is not even real. The whole debt's fraud. That's what the American people need to know.
Our next question will be, there will be no videos, just before our president candidates that are present. Simple question, gentlemen. Where do rights come from? 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Mr. Riggs, you will go first. Mr. Snicker, you'll take the podium when you finish.
It's real simple. Bare bones. Rights come from your standing in law. If you were a citizen of the Constitution found in Article 4, Section 2, Clause 1, which would be a citizen of the state, what some people refer to as sovereign Americans, a lot of Native Americans had the citizenship and they're referred to as sovereign Americans. You don't have, the 10th Amendment would apply to them because they're a citizen of the original Constitution, which is known as the Organic Constitution. You're now under a corporate constitution. Every constitution that has the 14th Amendment on is a corporate constitution. And technically, when you get deep into studying it, you realize even support the corporate constitution violates the very oath you took to uphold the Constitution, because they work non-synonymous of each other. But your standing in law comes from who you are. If you're a citizen of the United States, you're chattel property, you're a voluntary slave, and you're a corporation. If you're a citizen of Article 4, Section 2, Clause 1, the original Constitution, and you're a sovereign American, you have a right to own guns. Your rights are not made, your rights are not given back to you as civil liberties. They're inherent constitutional rights. It's all based on your standing in law. There's no jurisdiction if you're for these Tea Party issues and so forth. If your standing in law is constitutional, but as a corporation and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, everything applies to you as part of the corporate trust law. The citizenship of the United States is a corporation, as I've already shown you guys. That's your standing in law. Until you learn that you've been deceived and supposedly somewhere volunteered for this voluntary slavery, then you're stuck with it. Once you learn it's not real, it's never ratified, then hopefully we'll get it off our back and all go back to being free, and that will be our new standing in law. The old one.
Where do our rights come from? That was the question, right? Can you put the question back up? You can't? Okay, no worries.
No, it's not on the slide. It is simply, where do rights come from?
Okay. They come from our Creator. Whatever you think that your Creator is. They don't come from government. They don't come from anywhere else. They come from your Creator. They're natural. They're inalienable. That's it. There's no bigger answer than that. If anybody tells you any different than that, then they're just trying to control you. This country was built for the reasons that everyone has inalienable rights. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. That's it.